And welcome to the Inside Britball podcast. My name's Andy Taylor, and I'm joined, as always, by Stuart and Isaac as we come live to you over all social media platforms, where we've got Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram up and running. Get in the chat because we don't have a lot to talk about really, but no, that's not true. We've got tons. In terms of BUCS, we've got the results from the weekend in the 8.5 week. If you like, which only had one or two fixtures in the end. And then also we've got the writers' poll to catch up on. And then also we've got some contact football sort of catch-ups to think about as well. I know we're all ready and raring to go when it comes to giving our opinions on that. So we will get straight into all of that, and hopefully you can join us in the chat and give us your opinions as we go along as well. So let's get straight into it so we're not losing any time. We had two results over the weekend. One was an associate, one was a proper. And Isaac, we saw Sheffield Hallam take care of business against the Derby Braves in an 18-0 victory.
Yeah, it's nothing less than what we'd expected it from Hallam, really. It's them and Greens that are fighting now. At the top of that Midlands 1A, and that's the next game for both teams, which is incredible. But no, definitely, I think that Hallam needed to win this to keep up their momentum, to keep up a bit of pressure on the Greens. And it's quite a surprise that they didn't score as many points as they do against Sheffield. We've seen Sheffield beat Derby already this season. I think we wouldn't have been wrong to think that Hallam could put 50 plus points on Derby, but no, great performance by them, and now they can keep rolling.
Yeah, 100%. Stuart, anything more to add to here? Because it means that they're beating people at the moment that isn't called the Nottingham Greens, isn't it, at this point?
Yeah, they're still on the coattails of their crosstown rivals. So I think they're still one game behind the Sabres, aren't they? Sort of over this break, but they've still got that return fixture to play. So I think that's the one that they'll be sort of circling in January, February, going, if we win this one, we probably take second in the division. Obviously, the Sabres will be like, you're not having that. We're going to come at you in that game and try and claw back the 50-point deficit from the previous one. But I think they are looking up. That I think it is probably between them and Green for the playoff spot. We've got, if the season ends, coming on later on. I think they probably take that second game, and it's between them and Green for that division going into the playoff fight, shall we say.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take a look at the state of play. If the season ends today, what would the playoffs look like? We'll take a look at that in a second. But Stuart, did we get any insight into the Kingston-Winchester associate game? Winchester trying to get back into the league, aren't they?
Yeah, Winchester have posted literally in the last half an hour. I've shared it on our stories. They've put a post out with a little breakdown. They just said that in the first half they struggled a little bit, and I think for a team that doesn't play regularly, you probably are going to. So fair play. An associate process is a long, drawn-out process, but you're on the field, you're playing games, and Kingston are no sort of pushovers either. It's a difficult place. I said this last week. It's a difficult place to go and play football. Especially if the weekend weather was poor. So fair play to them. All the best getting back into the league. We'll share. I'm sure they've got a couple more games planned after Christmas, so we'll share what they're up to and how their results go. And we wish them all the best. And we'll watch on from afar and hope you guys get back into Tier 2 football next year.
We've got LJ in the chat on Instagram telling us that YSJ didn't want the smoke, but we'll. We'll leave that open to interpretation.
I heard they didn't have any game balls. That's
You've been saying that for months.
Yeah.
Awesome.
They still haven't bought them.
They've only got 2 or 3 more days from EP Sports as well, according to their graphics. If they get them shipped over from there quickly.
That's a great segue. Well done. That's incredible. Is that?
Well done.
That is top. Yeah.
For the brand.
For the brand. 100%. But they are running out of time. So they have got now 2 games that they haven't played. And as far as I can tell, they've got 1 or 2 weeks to get them fitted in. So that they are running out of time to fulfill their fixtures. So best of luck to YSJ getting that sorted, and obviously Hull will be wanting to get that in as well. There's lots of comments coming through Instagram. I'm not sure I daren't mention half of them, so keep it coming, guys. It's making me smile anyway on this jolly day.
I sense a fishing rod emoji with a big bait on the end of it. So yeah.
Something about Christian McAlary, so we'll leave it there. Let's have a look at the poll then, because before we get to where we are, we want to think of where we've been and what might change. And obviously, this will be a lot of looking back on the effect of. Apparently it's officially a walkover. That game now. Stuart,
it's already been rearranged. This is the second time. This is the first time it'll be rearranged, won't it? And I don't know if you can, because I think Hull, they were supposed to play Hull before, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that's why it's playing on a 0.5 week.
Right.
So
see if I can quickly look at that on BUCS.
Chat amongst yourselves, and I'll get on BUCS play.
Definitely, yeah. I can see that being a factor.
Yeah, it would. What you say sounds sensible, but we are talking about BUCS. So
no, it is officially listed on BUCS play as Hull with the win, York with the loss, 0-0.
Do we know why they actually postponed it? Is there anything come out? Because
no, I know Stuart tried to get out of YSJ, didn't you? But they didn't necessarily come forward with that.
During the week when there was ums and ahs whether it was being played, we did message both teams to see if it was happening, and they just told us that the SUs and AUs were talking to each other. That's pretty much all we knew. So we were like, okay, we won't say anything on the pod last week because there was the potential that it was going to happen. It obviously hasn't happened, and I'm sure that this result is obviously BUCS have an appeal process, so it might be that if YSJ can provide a fixture for this, a weekend for this fixture to happen, it may well go ahead. But it's at the moment, from what we see on BUCS play, it is currently a walkover win to Hull.
And it must be so frustrating for the players and the coaches, mustn't it, as well? I'm sure they're really frustrated not getting on the field, because I know even if I was a player in that team, you just want to get on and play, wouldn't you? And I'm sure the coaches do as well. So hopefully they can pull it together.
It's been a really weird season so far in that division.
So weird. Yeah. If it's not a massive blowout, it's a draw or not played. Odd. Like it was last year, if I remember correctly. But anyway, let's have a look. Yeah, exactly. So let's have a look at the writers' poll then, because that came out before those set of fixtures, but there won't be too much disruption, I would imagine, to the top 25 with those results, albeit Sheffield Hallam might get affected. We'll get your opinions on that now. Let's have a look at the top 5 as we always do. Real big shuffle for the first time in a while. A big reshuffle, and we did wonder whether there would be a flip or not, and it did happen, didn't it? So for those who are listening, UE now top, they go 2 up. Durham are now number 2, sorry, up 1. That's what I meant to say. Nottingham Gold down to 3. Brunel stay at 4, and then the Ian Atkinson NTU Renegades make it into the top 5, up 1. So Isaac, obviously you'll be very happy to see that your PR, your lobbying, everything that you've tried to do to get NTU into the top 5 has come to fruition.
Don't worry, guys. I'll slip you your money later. It's fine. I'm not surprised at all. I think that they deserve to be there. Since their first game of the season, which were a loss, they've looked as good as anyone in the South. Yeah, when they play on the playoffs, and we'll see how good they actually are. But no, they've made a name for themselves now. They're beating the teams they need to beat, and they're doing it quite convincingly against most teams. So it's not a surprise that NTU have made it up into 5. I think the graphic's slightly wrong. I think it's you with just a 1 place rather than 2, because
I think
Durham won't be able to move up and stuff like that. But no, I think that's not a surprise either. I think we talked about it last week, didn't we? That loss for Nottingham, if it were a close loss, it wouldn't have been that bad, and there wouldn't have been as much movement. but because of the way they lost, they have to move down to 3 just because of how good Durham played. And, it's the teams who beat each other, isn't it?
Yeah. And I did say on the pod last week that should they be tied as a threesome on points, then Durham would be top anyway, based on tiebreakers. So it made sense in my head, and I can't remember whether I flipped them. I think I did. But yeah, it makes some sense. But at the end of the day, we're going week by week, aren't we? By the end of the year, it'll all sort itself out. And we've obviously got, if the season ended today, coming up in a little while. Stuart, did you want to jump in there, or do you want to keep going into the top?
Yeah. I think Trent have jumped because of the performances of SGS and Loughborough. I think SGS were less than convincing down in Exeter with the 14-7 win the week before. And obviously Loughborough have kind of stumbled a little bit in the Prem National. So I think that's why NTU probably go above those two based on their 25-0 win against Newcastle the previous week. So yeah, I can see why they would have moved up and why that's flipped slightly in the top 5 there.
Yeah,
because they've got the best quarterback in all the books. That's why.
We need to bring up some sort of alert that says Ian Atkinson fanboy or something like that coming up. Awesome. Let's have a little look at the rest of the top 10, and then we'll go down from there. So as you mentioned, Stuart, SGS go to 6, Loughborough up 4 to 7, which is probably on the back end of losses from other people. Warwick hold at 8, Cardiff up to 9, Northumbria and Newcastle fall to 10 and 11. But then we have some less movement where Napier hold at 12, Lancashire at 13, and Nottingham Green at 14. And then, as I lobbied myself, the Bournemouth Bobcats now find themselves in the top 15, which I think is right. But what do you guys think in terms of these the 6 to 15 that I've kind of ran through, even though I normally stop at 10?
I think this graphic sort of shows your tiers a little bit more. So I think that 11-12 cut off.
You mean my groupings?
Yeah. I think it sort of shows that a little bit more this week. So it's almost like now we've got more data points as a group. We're all starting to come to a similar consensus, I think. The Raiders obviously drop considerably based on that loss to NTU, which propelled them up. Loughborough jump up, as you say, I think also on the back of a lot of losses, and the Raiders dropping and Northumbria dropping. I think that's where Loughborough pick up through having not played. And then the rest, you probably can't move them any higher because there's Prem teams above tier 1 teams. And yeah, Bournemouth Bobcats now getting closer and closer to playoff football are now starting to come into people's radars to think, okay, maybe they should be in the top 25, because when playoffs come, that -7 points that was there isn't playing on people's minds anymore. And I think they start to then be the true team. I know obviously the coach that I mentioned several times this year has mentioned about the injuries they've had. They now also get chance to rest up. The 2 players that obviously had the breaks probably won't be back in the new year. I hope they heal up sort of over the Christmas break and get set ready for next year if they're returners. But a lot of their other players that have got knocks and niggles can hopefully return, and they come back worryingly even stronger in the new year, and they look to kick on in the playoffs.
Well, they went 6 out of 7, didn't they? Didn't they play 6 weeks out of 7?
Played 6 in 7 weeks. Yeah.
So they've got the rest, and then they've only got 2 to see themselves out for the rest of the regular season. You know that they've gone hard early, and they've now got 2 home games to finish out the season. One versus Plymouth, which are the bottom, aren't they? The bottom of that division, and then they've got Southampton coming to them. So you're right, and I can't see them really going anywhere from that top 15. Isaac, what about yourself? Any surprises there for you?
Not
pull it back up again.
Not particularly any surprises. I think we've spoke about this the last couple of weeks, but after Christmas, we're gonna start seeing Newcastle, Northumbria, Cardiff start dropping a little bit, because you can't deny what Napier, Lancashire, Nottingham are doing. They're still undefeated, and even Bournemouth as well. You can't deny what they're doing is ultimately better than what the Newcastle Raiders are doing or the Northumbria Mustangs, because these teams are very hot or cold out there. They're very either they're going to put loads of points on you and play really well, or you look at Newcastle where they're losing 20 plus to nil. it's hard to say that they're one of the better teams in the division or the better teams in the UK when I think a majority of top end tier 1 sides, your Greens, your Rams, them sort of teams could go into that division and compete. Whereas, you've got teams like your Leeds, for example, who aren't even on that graphic or in the Prem. It's that kind of stuff in it. It's like them teams eventually are going to have to drop off because they are no longer one of the best.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, as I say, I've just got an issue with having an 04 in my top 25. I can see myself if Leeds pick up a win, Exeter pick up a win, they're going to be picking up a win against the team that I'm currently saying is top 20 in the country. So you'd be slotting them back in almost, wouldn't you? Who knows where, but I can imagine that would happen, and that would be a big reshuffle where we might see some of those tier 1 teams drop.
But I think they're going to pick up their wins against some of them hot core teams. You look at Portsmouth, for example. 1 week they're terrible, and then the next week, the challenging teams. It's really strange to see that in the Prem, because normally you got teams that are either consistently poor or consistently good, and there's not that in between. Whereas this year, especially, we've seen that that flip flop of teams, haven't we?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, even NTU have got a loss, haven't they? Which that North division is turning into some sort of spicy medley, isn't it? Really, which is probably why we've got them where we've got them in the writers' poll. Let's have a look at the rest of the top 25 briefly then. Portsmouth come up 116, Hertfordshire get their love coming up to 17, 3 spots. Exeter Demons at 18, hold and serve there. Got Leeds coming up to 19. OBU probably not being as punished as much as they were for their loss a few weeks ago, and actually getting some more love back from the opinion poll, up 4 to 20. Leeds Beckett now down 2 to 21. Manchester Tyrants come back in at 22, and it's probably where this 21 to 35 are pretty much a case of how you're going to shuffle your cards, because then you see Sheffield Hallam there drop 8 to 23. KCL, King's College come in at 24, and Kent hold serve at 25. So we talked about, who did we talk about that might come back in? Potentially Glasgow. Surprised not to see Bristol, personally, considering the only team that they've lost to is the Bournemouth Bobcats. But to be fair, they are still there at 4 and 2. So when you compare on the field results, you can understand why they might not have made it just yet. But I think they were first off, weren't they? I think they were the first one off. They're probably sitting there at 26th. So Stuart, anything stand out to you here?
I was trying to work out how Hallam have dropped that far. And I think it's off other teams winning. Obviously, Hearts and OBU come off 2 big wins against the Birmingham Lions, which is why I think they jump so high, both of them. Leeds Griffins put up a bit of a performance as well the previous week, if I remember correctly. I'm just scanning through the spreadsheet.
Well, just to jump in there as well, they had an off week. Other people won, and their record at this point was only 2 and 1. So when you do, if you've got someone, I know what your process is like, Stuart, as well. If you're looking at record wins and losses, then you can see how they might shuffle down the pack, which is where this sort of shuffling happens probably. But I can imagine if we think about the result from this week gone by, they might just stick where they are or bump back up again.
Yeah. And then the rest for me are pretty much, they don't match in terms of my rankings. The teams match in terms of the list, but maybe not the numbers down the far left-hand side. So, yeah, for me, I think we are all coming to some sort of common consensus now. We've got more data points. It'd be interesting to see how we sort of settle down after Christmas. I've got an interesting little graphic that shows how we've done between week 1 and week 8, which will hopefully go out the back end of this week or early next week. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how we all come together after Christmas when playoff football's on the line.
Mm-hmm. Anything for you, Isaac?
Yeah, I'm shocked that Leeds are still lost, but yeah, they've jumped up places. I think that is harsh on Hallam to dock up 8 just because they haven't played. You look at the games they have played, and they are better than most teams in that division apart from one. I think that Portsmouth are probably where they should be. Again, they're blowing hot or cold some weeks. It's weird to say. Hertfordshire the same. I think they've surprised a few people this year with just how well they've been playing. You thought Birmingham would pull that division, and they've put them to the side, I think, twice now. And they're beating OBU, who people start of the season were putting in the top 15. So yeah, definitely, I think that over the after Christmas, when we start seeing rematches against each other, we'll get to see what the true state of play is. But yeah, I can't understand how Leeds have jumped up 2 when they're lost, and yeah, we're a close loss, but they still haven't won.
Can I give you a theory on that, Matt? And it's a theory on the fly, so please pull it apart. Theory is that if you take away their NTU loss, okay, which was a 29 point loss, across their other 3 games, they've lost by an average of a touchdown. So I wonder whether it's just a case of, are they actually not that far away from the others at the bottom of that division? So if I've got Warwick, not me personally, but looking at the writers' poll, if I've got Warwick at 8 and they're only losing by 8, I've got Northumbria in the top 10 and they've only lost by 3. Is it, you hear it in the CFP all the time, is it because they're not bad losses?
That Northumbria one was I won't say a bad loss, but definitely one that it was in their hands. I think they were a touchdown up and going into the fourth quarter, and they ended up losing like one of the last plays. So I think that is a bad loss of just not being able to finish the game. The NTU one I was there for, and when I was watching them, I watched them think, they weren't a prem side on the day. Like, they had flashes, but weren't consistent enough. Like, I think that, especially in the Prem, it's the one thing you need. Is why Brunel are playing so well. That they're not always beating teams, but they're always winning. And what I mean by that is they're not scoring 50 points on every single team, but they're finding a way to win. And it's something that SGS have been doing for years as well. They're not going to score 40 points, 50 points a game, but they'll beat a team 12-0. Do you know what I mean? They'll get them little scrappy wins.
For the first 6 weeks. Yeah.
Exactly. Like NTU have done, like Warwick have done last season, Warwick, I think a lot of people have said that they've only got one player. It's better to have one player that works than 120 that don't. And it's one thing that they found that works for them. But I think that's the problem for Leeds, that they've got flashes of moments that they look like they belong in the Prem, but it's not sustained. It's, I think that's just my real opinion on it. The fact that from what I've seen, and Warwick, you knew they were going to be a run-heavy team, and you've not been able to stop it. It's kind of a, what I mean? Nothing screams that they should be in the top 25 to me.
Yeah. I mean, there's a comment on Instagram from George, presumably. What's the point of all the divisions if there are teams getting dog walked in every division? So I think, we touched upon this last year when we were talking about these play-ins and these playoffs, and and so on. And they do have a positive in the sense that you don't lose a division, you don't drop down a division if you are better than what's coming up. But at the same time, it keeps quite a lot down as well, doesn't it? Which can be tricky.
I think the one thing that also is tricky is there's only one relegation spot from the Prem North and Prem South each. So only one team of these like you look at the North, for example, you've got Napier, Napier, Green, Lancashire, Hallam could go up. You know what I mean? You've got 5+ teams all who could go up, but there's only one spot to take. And that's kind of the problem when then you've got Div 2 teams that are replacing. You look at Edge Hill this year, for example. They had a great back end of the last season. They got promoted, but they haven't been able to compete at that level. So now they're getting beat every week. And I think they'll be one of them clubs, like you see in football all the time, don't you? Like yo-yo clubs that go up to the Premier League and then go back down. Look at Leeds, for example. I can't wait for them to get relegated. Do you know what I mean? Like you got them yo-yo clubs constantly, and it's the same what happens in Div 1 because the teams at the top stay in Div 1. And it's you look at Birmingham, Birmingham have come down. Everyone thought Prem team, they're going to walk it, they're going to do incredible, and they haven't because Div 1 is that strong. It's more, in my opinion, it's more competitive than the Prem North or South because when you get to playoff time, when it means something, you've got 6 other teams who are just as good as you. Whereas in the Prem North, you've got your 1s and 2s that are as good as each other, and then your 3 and 4 that will have a 500 record, maybe less than. Just because the other team at the bottom can't win. You know what I mean? You look at last year, for example, with Newcastle staying up. because Liverpool couldn't go. It's that sort of stuff, isn't it?
And the thing is that if, to your point, if you look at last year's playoffs coming out of Tier 1, right, you've got Brunel and Northumbria who obviously made the final. You've got Edinburgh Napier who were semi-finalists last year. In the south, you had Bournemouth, Kent, and Bristol in the quarters, semi-finals being Bournemouth. And where me and you were talking about this every week, that are Napier, Lancs, and Bournemouth Prem teams in Tier 1, but only two of them can go up. And it's going to be those who make it to the final.
And I think that, when we spoke to Tonya at the end of last season, and he said there could be an expansion of the Prem National.
Of the National, yeah.
Yeah, of the National. I mean, that's going to be good, because then you'll see the shuffle of other teams going up. You'll see Green and Lancs and Northumbria and these good teams that were great in Div 1. You'll see them just going against each other week on week. And again, it brings that competition, doesn't it? It brings that the sort of fire that the teams want.
And in my opinion, that's why I love the poll so much.
Yeah.
So I get to do that week in, week out. The guys who are listening and watching can tell me if I've done bad at it, right? And I'll take on board that feedback. But at the end of the day, that's what I enjoy doing, because I'm thinking, who are the Prem teams in disguise as Tier 1, and that's where this poll comes in.
I think from my experience, university football as well, it's always about planning ahead and knowing where you're going to be, because more so from adult football or women's football or youth football, that churn of players, you have classes of like 20 people who move on because they've graduated and they can't play for you anymore. And all of a sudden you drop from being a top of Tier 1 team to scraping the barrel at the bottom of Tier 1. And then your next lot of 20 leave. Your next 20 come up, that you have to teach them football in 6 weeks, get them on board, and by that time, by Christmas, you've already lost 3 games because you're teaching your kids to play football, your athletes to play football, and then before you know it, you're at the top of Tier 2, and then you have to bounce your way back up because you've got your guys for 4 years or 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, whatever you are. Birmingham, you're 8 years as it was when I was there. And you bounce yourself back up the league and you become a Prem team again. Fantastic. But then you have 1 year in the Prem and all you guys graduate again. And you see teams tumble and fall. We talk about, they're an ex-Prem side, UEA, Kingston, Birmingham, Hertfordshire, everybody. It's like up and down. Isaac, you're on mute, mate. You bounce up and down and it's like, go on. Who did you say?
I said Swansea in Div 2.
Swansea as well. Yeah, great.
Once you go down, you get stuck.
Exactly. And all you guys graduate, and then the coaches think, all of my players have left. So you often lose 1 or 2 coaches, and now you're chasing your tail again. And it's like, great. So yeah, BUCS football, more so than anywhere, is where maybe youth football as well, because youth football, you graduate through years, don't you? So yeah, but I still think BUCS is more prevalent because probably most people follow BUCS, whereas they may not follow youth football. I keep saying youth, unders football, which you should definitely go ahead and do.
Yeah, we're not getting into that debate. But yeah, George also says 3 years, Queen Mary to the top. Yeah, why not? We're Quimble fans here.
Up the Vipers.
Yeah.
The Siege let me down, so now I'm on. They're going to be my 25 team from now on, if you keep winning.
There you go. And then Sam reckons that Div 1 South, or Tier 1 South, is weaker this year. Presumably he means comparing to the North. So interesting.
I could see that compared to the North, definitely. But I won't say it's a weak division at all. I think there's
there's some tasty
teams are beating everyone. Do you know what I mean? You look at the Hertfordshire, Brooks, Birmingham, all teams are beating each other all the time. So no, I think it's competitive in itself, but against the North, it's not, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, like, no one's going to want to come up against Bournemouth, who are going to be a 4th to 6th seed.
Especially when they get on that run in the playoffs, where they've got to play if they get in there the first round, then do you know what I mean? And it goes like that, and it's momentum, isn't it?
What a fantastic segue to if the season ended today. It's almost like you've done this before, Isaac. So let's get into that. We haven't got any graphics prepared as such, which, to be honest, probably is a saving grace, because we probably pepper you guys with graphics on this podcast sometimes. But if you are watching, I'll put it along the bottom of the screen, and we'll talk it through for our listeners as well. So if the season ended today, who would be in the playoffs, and what would be the first round playoff matchup? So If we go from the top,
we think this isn't guaranteed. This isn't checked by BUCS.
Right,
we think so. Please, get in the comments. Tell us when we're wrong.
Should have done a different banner with a disclaimer just for Stuart. Yes. So absolutely. This is the mathematics of Andrew Taylor Esquire. So absolutely. If I've got it wrong, let me know. And there are some fun things that I can go through, but I won't bore you with. But yes, let's go straight into the national. So in the championship, if the season ended today, the first round would be UE versus Loughborough and Notts Gold versus Durham. We've seen them before, haven't we? That would be a tasty matchup to have in the semi-final, wouldn't it, between Notts and Durham if we got that?
Yeah, I think that it's going to be interesting to see if Loughborough stay in there because it's not a massive points difference to Beckett. Beckett have looked poor all year, but on the day, we know they can score points. They have done against UE and against Notts, so that could be a surprise there. But again, I highly doubt it. But no, that Gold Durham game, especially if it's back at the David Ross or the Durham Ross, as the Saints fans have been calling it.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that'll be a tasty affair because I think you look at Coach Jason Scott and he'll take that personally about what happened 2 weeks ago now, and he'll be looking to beat them and really show them what they're about.
Yeah, and that'll be the big one here, won't it? Will be who's two, who's three. If they can't get to one, which obviously at the moment UE in the driving seat, but that's because they've played 2 extra games, isn't it? So that'll be different for them, wouldn't it? In terms of Loughborough, so Loughborough are the only team not confirmed in the playoffs at this point, and as you say, they've only got that
6 points,
that minor head-to-head 6 points against Leeds Beckett. So Leeds Beckett, if they win by a touchdown, they'll be the ones travelling to UE at this point in time. But the maths is easy on this one. Do you want to add anything, Stuart, or should we go straight onto the VARs?
I'm just quickly trying to get the graphic up. Have you still got it up with the date? It's the final of all of these are happening in Loughborough on the same day on Touchdown Tuesday, but I don't have the graphic up. While we talk about the other ones, I'll try and find the dates for you all.
Yeah, fair dues.
The finals. Oh yeah.
24th of something. 24th of March, did I see?
And Dave, you worked on a trademark yet for Touchdown Tuesday. It was your idea to begin with. Everyone's run with it.
I'm in Tonye's DMs saying I need the money. Exactly. Let's have a little look at the VARs then. So in the VARs, obviously it's the North and South get interconferenced, if you like, in the Prem. The VARs being the not national Prem, and so it's 1 versus 4, 2 versus 3, and it's North versus South for the first one. So Sam saying in the chat 25th of March, and so
he's wrong. It's March the 24th. It's Tuesday the 24th. Ignore him. He's also just messaged me and telling me he's on a plane. So either he's been on some fun stuff, or his calendar's already changed over to a different time zone. So Sam, you're wrong, mate.
I'm glad you have that relationship with him. So
did have that relationship.
I thought it was some random person, and for a second, you just called him out live.
No, it's fine.
That'd have been worse.
Brilliant. Okay, so quarterfinal matchups at the moment would be NTU versus Portsmouth, Warwick versus Cardiff, Brunel versus Newcastle, and then SGS versus Northumbria. Some tasty matchups in that first round. What do you reckon, Stuart?
Yeah, tasty. Wow. Where do we start? Warwick, Cardiff. I think that's probably, leaving Sam's Brunel aside. Let's not keep bashing on Sam's train. Cardiff travelling to Warwick. I think
is his connection going?
Is going to be really interesting because Cardiff tend to keep talking, and there you go. You're all back. For me, it'll be how do Warwick translate to sort of playoff football, and whether they can get push. It's I don't even know what to call it. Oh, have I also gone really slow as well? Yeah. It's Sammy's affecting my Wi-Fi.
Try again. What were you saying about Warwick?
Am
and
I
Cardiff?
back now? Have you got me back better now?
I
Just
think so.
about.
We'll see.
You-
Try again.
You've got me back now. Brilliant. Cardiff tend not to travel too well, and Warwick tend not to score much at all, let's face it. So, yeah, for me, it'll be all about which team really sort of shows up on that day to sort of take the win and progress into the semi-finals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And you know, the 1 versus 4 is obviously interesting. I think nobody's going to be wanting to travel to Brunel, let alone Newcastle or Northumbria having to make that journey. And it's good. And at the moment, we're talking about it's going to be Newcastle, and that's one hell of a journey to come up against a Brunel team, isn't it? And that probably feels like the most one-sided potentially out of the two. But you know, Newcastle have been fierce on defense this year, haven't they? You know, Isaac, what are your thoughts on these matchups to start off with?
Yeah, I think, like Stuart said, that Warwick Cardiff one's the one where you can't call it either way. But I believe that the other ones you can. Do you know what I mean? You can, from what we've seen so far, you could confidently say that NTU should beat Portsmouth. You know, Brunel should beat Newcastle. SGS should beat Northumbria. But you know, the playoffs throw up some wild, wild scenarios, don't they? You know, so we'll have to just wait and see. I think last year where UCLan lost to Stirling at one point, and no one saw that coming, and that sort of stuff. So no, definitely, I think that most people could maybe be able to call it now, but until we actually see the teams on the day, we don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only team confirmed in the playoffs at the moment out of this lot is Brunel, and that's particularly to do with their schedule, but also the fact that they've come out to a barnstorming 5-0 and nobody else has. So that's one of the reasons. Obviously, their schedule has allowed them to have head-to-heads that they've been able to whittle away some of their head-to-heads in the standings, and obviously. They can't be overtaken by at least one of their opponents, so they've qualified for that. But as we've mentioned already, the North is the North, and who knows who's going to end up in that 1-4 at this point, and we're still not certain that Leeds are out of it at this point either. And so, really interesting to see how that shakes out at this point. But the maths is easy in the Prem; it's points, and then it's head-to-head, and that's it. Stuart, did you want anything to add anything else into the Vars, or do you want to go on to the trophy?
No, move on. I think my Wi-Fi is getting better.
Sound. Let's have a look at the Trophy North then. So the National Trophy, which is Tier 1. And to start off with, the round of 16, which is obviously the eight teams from the North and the 8 teams from the South. The North go up against each other until they get to a national final where they face the best of the South and likewise. So at the moment, with all the maths that goes into Tier 1, because the trickiness with the Tier 1 maths is the fact that some of these divisions have forfeits already. I look at Scotland, which has a forfeit across every single team. So when you're working out the tiebreakers out of this, you have to consider average points per game, and that is league points, not points on the field. So you have to do some averaging to be able to get those tiebreakers. But nonetheless, you're seeded. If you finish top, you're seeded 1 to 3. If you finished second, you're seeded 4 to 6, and if you finish third, you're seeded 7 to 9, and the 9th seed doesn't make it. Is basically the gist of that. So that's a long disclaimer to tell you where I got to, which I think at the moment is Lancashire hosting Stirling. Then we've got Manchester Tyrants, who will be hosting Sheffield as the 5th seed. That's Sheffield Sabres. Edinburgh Napier will be hosting Sheffield Hallam. They'll be travelling up to Edinburgh at this point. And then Nottingham will be hosting Glasgow. Wow, some games. I got excited by some of these games. Isaac, did you?
Yeah, definitely. I think that, the return of Lancs versus Stirling from last year, when Stirling upset the Rams, that Manchester Tyrants Sheffield one's really difficult to call. I think that this is why I kind of like the Tier 1, Tier 2 kind of method of the playoffs, because like you get these close games and where you can see teams who are, I'd say, equals possibly go against each other. Sheffield and Manchester Tyrants are them equals. Napier Hallam could cause an upset there. They are, they're in the toughest division in Tier 1, and they could definitely cause that upset. And in Notts Green, Glasgow, it's a long way to travel from Glasgow down Nottingham. So definitely, I think the Notts Green are one of them teams that any team who gets put in front of them, they'll be able to beat. They'll be able to find a way to win. So definitely, I think Notts Green could easily take that victory.
Awesome. Let's head straight to the South, Stuart, rather than labouring the point, because in the round of 16 for the South, I think at the moment everybody is playing the same amount of games. I think. Is there anyone? No. So Kent having a forfeited game that plays around with the forfeits as well. So obviously wherever they finish, that'll be affected by the average points there of the games played, which is where this will all come into. I think, if I've got it right, I can hear Tonye telling me off for getting it all wrong again. But let's see if I've got it slightly right. At the moment, Hearts versus Bath. So Hearts sitting in that first seed. Bristol will hold the second seed at this point, and they'll face Brighton. OBU as the 4 seed will host Kent, and King's College will, as the 3rd seed at the moment, will host Bournemouth. Yikes, what a game that would be. KCL versus Bournemouth.
Out of all of the knockout football competitions, I think this side of this bracket is the most interesting, because we've got teams across the board that have not lost, but are still sort of find a little bit of intrepidation in their fixtures. So KCL against Bournemouth, they're 2 unbeaten teams, and they might find themselves playing against each other. And it's like, why? But yeah, because of Bournemouth's admin error last year, kind of makes this particular fixture really interesting. It will show us whether that sort of South Division that Kings are in is potentially a little bit weaker, but perhaps, or whether Bournemouth are absolutely for real and they travel and absolutely knock the socks off King's College and progress to the next round. The other 3 fixtures are all ridiculously close as well, and I'm not going to call any of them. But that Bristol-Brighton one for me, Bristol have kind of been there or thereabouts all season. And if that holds up, if they hold up, it obviously depends on the Bath-Bristol score in the next game. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see that one, if that one holds up as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to KCL Bournemouth, Bristol Brighton, OBU Kent. That'll all be awesome, won't it? I'll take on any of those, and I'll be enjoying whatever comes out of those fixtures for sure. That is tasty, to say the least. So let's look at Tier 2 then. So we've got the Conference Cups. They don't have cross conference at this point, do they? They're all northern, and so we've got again a bit more trickier maths, because there's the Northwest that only play 4 games. There's the Northeast that'll be playing 4, I think, and then the Midlands that'll be playing 5, and then you've got the same in the South, where they'll have different numbers of fixtures, so you have to take average points. So I think, based on those average points, the first quarterfinal matchups at this point of the season will be Lancaster versus Hull, John Moores versus Cambridge, Sunderland versus Coventry, and ARU versus York. And I have no idea what my prediction would be for any of those games. Because what do you think, Isaac?
Yeah, it's tricky to call because we don't get to see these teams often. It could either be like, you look at AIU, for example, who had a couple of close wins, and then lose to DMU, a side that, if they kept up that run, they should be beating. And no, I'm not bitter at all. At £50 down, but no, definitely, I think that's why it's so hard to call, because you don't see the teams often. You look at Sunderland that do draw against York and look strong then against YSJ and blow them out the water. Lancaster, I think the only team that you could probably put money on if you were betting is probably Lancaster, because they're 2 wins from 2 against Salford. I can't remember the other team, but I remember it was Salford.
Staffs, I think. Okay.
And Staffs, exactly. So definitely, I think when the likes of Lancaster and LJMU play against each other, and then Sunderland have to go play, when they get further down the stretch and they play Hull, these teams are still going to have to play each other some of them. So it definitely, like Coventry, for example, I think they've still got to play AIU or they've got to play Cambridge. This division's so hard to call because we don't see them enough. We don't see them as much as Tier 1 or the Prem because there are only 4 or 5 games in a season, which isn't enough football.
Yeah. And then interestingly, 3 come out of Northeast and 3 come out of Midlands, which is obviously all the interesting point of this is where the 3 teams going to come out. Well, which one is going to have the 2? And at the moment, it's the Northwest. That's probably due to the lack of games that they've played at this point. Stuart, then if we quickly have a look at South, because I know there's other things that we want to get to. Currently, I've got it that Swansea will host Sussex, Surrey will host UE2, Reading will host Gloucestershire, and Imperial will host the future Prem Quimble. What's your thoughts on that? That Imperial Quimble game looks really, really good, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Take the words out of my mouth.
Into
also
division.
The South, yeah. It's a fixture we've seen a couple of times. I was also, while you guys were chatting about the North, I was looking. If teams play playoff football, they get 3 fixtures if they win all the way through. So some of these teams that only have 4 league fixtures, almost half of their games will be playoff football. Yeah. Absolutely bonkers. Absolutely bonkers. But hey, there we go. We'll come on to how you align Div 1 and Div 2 later on in the pod, I think. But yeah, Imperial Quimble, as you say, inter-division rivalry, let's call it that. Be interesting to see what UE2 do the rest of the season. They've obviously had a couple of good fixtures. They play Swansea, if I remember correctly. UE2 Swansea on the 8th of February, there it is. So yeah, that game will have a lot of bearing in how playoff football lines up in that division and who hosts and who has to travel for me, because I think it's probably going to be those 2 out of that division, and it's just who's 1 and who's 2 in there that then makes that journey more interesting, having to travel for playoff football.
Awesome. Yeah, great stuff. It'll be brilliant to see how that all plays out after Christmas. We've got obviously 5 weeks-ish of football. After that, 6 if you include the 9.1. So yeah, there's plenty of football still to happen. And what we're going to do is from now on, as we do with all formats, is that we'll keep you updated week by week as to where we are with the playoffs as we go along. And it'll be my maths that will have to be right. Otherwise I'll look like a complete fool. So hopefully I've taken the lessons that we need. So right, well, there's a couple of things that we wanted to get to, because there's what we haven't been able to get to whilst we're bringing you all of this is some of the news that's been happening over British American football. Obviously, the flag guys take care of the flag, so we wanted to take a little bit of time to catch up with some of the news that has been coming out and maybe some of the discussions that might not necessarily be news that we want to get to as well. So might run a little bit long here, but that's okay because there's plenty to get to. We will figure it out over the Christmas break how we're going to bring you these news a bit more promptly and how we can talk about these in a bit more detail during the season as well. But first of all, we wanted to kind of get to the GB program, didn't we? Because we had a real shake-up that came out. Seemed like it was quick fire, wasn't it? It was real sort of like, oh, this is happening. Oh, and we kind of talked about, I think, during the summer, or at least beginning of the summer, how there wasn't any GB games being scheduled, or at least we didn't know what was going on with GB, because we knew that there was some rumours about France pulling their contact team and so on, and there was not a lot. We tried to reach out and get a bit of insight into that, and other than there was no games, but there was some camps. And then we saw this restructure, didn't we? We had this announcement from BAFA that they were going to completely restructure the national program. And correct me if I'm wrong, Isaac, because you've got more insight into this than I have because you've been in it. But I believe that they were all separated into teams, weren't they? So there would have been under 17s, under 19s, adult contact, and then women's contact, wasn't there? And then obviously the flag as well, which we knew that they had a men's and a women's performing really, really well, both going off to Worlds in the flag, and now they're looking to expand that to have an academy to kind of bring through this sort of Olympic legacy. We've now got this 4-team program effectively, haven't we, which is adult performance, again not necessarily defined, but presumably that is the adult contact team that are going to go and compete for medals. Women's performance, same, but for women's football. And then adult development, which is officially replacing under 19s. But what that's telling us that there's no official sort of conversation around under 19s, under 21s, or whether that is development for the adults as well. And then we've got the academy, haven't we, which is for under 17. So a big shake-up. Isaac, what's your first thoughts on the shake-up?
Now, when I was in the GB program, which was many years ago now, it was the same at U17s, U19s. The 19s were the performance, the 17s were development, but you had players who were older than 17 who'd cross over into the development one, and the ones who were good, who were performing in the development team, would go into the performance team. And I think that's what it's for. I think labeling like this makes it clear of where players are. You've got the players who, are the best in the UK and the best in Great Britain, and they're going to perform the highest. They should be in the performance team. Then the development one, I think it's good because you see a structure, don't you? I think we say it like a lot. You look at the Manchester Titans, the London Blitz, the Warriors, for example. You've got a U16s team, a U19s, and then an adult, and it's that curve of going up. I'd say slowly, but the U17 players are going to get 11-11 contact feel like they have done in the regionals, which has worked really well and helped the GB programs massively. But if they can run the same playbook, get the understanding down and have that connection between the adults and the youth teams, it's going to be huge, I think, for the British American football as a whole, because you're going to see that the people who are coming in and the athletes who are coming in at 16 years old and they've been playing the sport for a year or two, they go 11v11 and then they're just there and they can just up, and slowly but surely they can go up, and there's marks they've got to hit to be able to go to the next level. So I think that restructure itself is actually really good for the game, and really good because now we'll be able to compete against the likes of Austria, who are one of the best, Germany, Sweden, some of the best teams in Europe. We're now going to be able to compete against for a long time, because it's not two different, it's not two different programs as it once was. You want the men's and the kids per se. It's one program, and it is just labelled as performance development, and then U17s. It's a really, really good thing.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you, because what they're effectively saying is that once you turn 18, you're on a path. Mm-hmm. Right, you're on a pathway to make it into that performance. And looking into the statement in a bit more detail, the adult development team replacing under 19s. So it's now, once you turn 18, you're on a pathway. It will in 2026 they're going to compete at tier 2 of IFAF competitions. And while not restricted by athlete age, that competition doesn't restrict age. BAFA are going to restrict the development team to the age of 24. So it's effectively becoming an under 24 team, which sounds good in my head. It's a bit like how Flag are doing it now with gold and silvers, right? And I feel as if, I certainly remember talking to Jason a number of years ago about it, and it's something that he definitely wanted for a while. And obviously this has got a lot of Jason behind it as well. But obviously a lot of the funding will be influencing these movements as well. Stuart, do you feel positive about these changes?
Yeah, I think the key thing for me is that this gives the under-19s that IFAF competitive football back that was sort of ripped away from them about 18 months or so ago. That there was like, why have we been taken out of all IFAF competitions? Why are you not doing this? Why are you not doing that? And it gives them that competitive football under a GB banner, that they know where they're going. As you say, once they turn sort of 18, 19, they have that pathway. That if they're in the program in the academy team, 16, 17, 18, playing sort of 7s, 9s, and sometimes 11s, yes, it gives them that clear goal of, okay, I've seen this guy play for the performance team. I've been and watched them play at BUCS Park. There's a couple of games scheduled later on in 26 that I've seen or heard rumoured around, which will come on to the new head coach and what they're saying. But yeah, for me, it gets rid of that grey area in the middle where we weren't competitive as a nation, where now we've got a group of players, 18 to 24 through that 6-year period where most people are still picking up a helmet and shoulder pads, by the way, at university, and they can put their neck on the line and go to these camps, get some top level coaching, and think, okay, I'm aspiring to be in that team that are training on the Sunday, perhaps, or maybe even training on the other end of the field to them in the performance team, and see that, you know, the coaching they're getting, the analysis they're getting, the physio, the treatment, the S&C programs, everybody's getting that now under this player pathway.
But player identification will become easier for the program as well, won't it? Because I can imagine if you were a scout or a head coach trying to find talent that wasn't necessarily in the program already, if you had under 17s, under 19s, and then adults, you had 2 years, maybe 3, to get them into your program, get them up to speed, and then all of a sudden they're having to go on to adults or not make it at all, and then have to find themselves local to home in a local club. It allows them for what's that, 5 to 6 years to identify talent to become part of a development program that might not necessarily be on the island of the UK, right? It might be that they identify someone with a British passport in America or in France or in Germany, and they can still bring them in for a few years, especially when you consider NFL Academy and SGS being on home soil as well at this point.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, and on top of that, as part of the update, we've then got head coaches that got announced as well, which seemed to really happen quickly. And, you know, it really did happen quickly, didn't it? And, you know, we got the announcement. When was this announcement put through? Early December, so a couple of weeks ago, where we got the announcement that the 2 standing flag head coaches will keep their job permanently. That'll be Jack Reed and Nick Keys, and I'm sure the guys over on the flag pod will be talking about that in due course. But in terms of contact, we had the women's is now taken on by Laura Moore, who I remember talking to Laura as part of the program, the team manager role for the men's, which is now obviously called Adult Performance. So she's now taken on the head coach there for the women's, the first women's head coach in charge of the women's contact team, which is fantastic, great news, and I'm sure she's proud of that, and I'm certainly proud of her being able to get to that. And then we've got men's performance is now headed up by Kevin Keohane. So I suppose the big headline, just to add, men's development to be announced, academy to be announced, but we know that there's plenty of amazing head coaches already within that program if they're sticking around. So I suppose the big headline here really is Jason Scott no more, isn't it? I know that's probably, that's certainly not been, you know, it's not been highlighted majorly in the announcement. He is still in the program, but he's no longer the head coach of the men's football team.
I was going to say he may not be head coach, but I believe he's like program lead or something like that.
Oh,
so he's going to oversee the whole GB structure. So I'm sure his fingerprints, we'll still see it throughout the programs. And I think that's no more evident than I was going to call it the men's the men's team. I shouldn't, the performance team, with the appointment of Kevin.
We should, sorry, Stuart, just to interrupt you to clarify. Sorry, mate, just to clarify. I called it adult performance. It has now been called men's performance. So in that initial statement that they said they were restructuring, they were going to call it adult performance, but then they've now called it men's performance to align it with IFAF, because IFAF call it men's and women's, not adult.
True.
So yeah, so you, just to help you out there, you were right to call it men's.
Yeah, I think I was just going to call it men's team rather than men's performance, but now I've got to remember performance development and academy. So it's just like when we switched from youth and junior to U16 and U19. It's going to take some getting used to. But yeah, what I was going to say was, I don't think, or I think the fingerprint mentality is no more evident in the performance team. I'm sure there was other really good candidates that applied for that head coach position, but having been to a couple of GB practices, it kind of makes sense to promote from within, and I'm sure they had coaching development plans. So yeah, to see Kevin get that position, I think is great for the program, because it keeps it, insular is completely the wrong word, but you kind of get where I'm going with that. Same face, same coaching structure, same philosophies. The players know what they're about when they have the same coaches. So yeah, for me, although, as you say, Jason's kind of stepped away from the head coach position, you're still going to see him at all the events. You're still going to see the philosophies, maybe not the full-on playbook, but little bits of playbooks.
Well, he's not going to be on the sideline, is he? So
no.
he might be as a, he might be there as a dignitary or whatever, but he's not going to be on the sideline, which is obviously a big step for for someone who has been regarded as one of the best coaches that in the country for a very long time. That's obviously a big thing, and I think that's a huge development in this. And Kev's got a huge shoes to fill. He's been obviously mentored by Jason through the GB programs. Every time I've gone to a GB camp, Kev's there with the O-line, right? He's always there. And actually, when I was down there, Kev was one of the only guys to come up and say hi, of the coaches. So, looking forward. We are teeing up, catching up with them in the new year. We've reached out to them, both Laura and Kev, already, and they've asked if we can catch up in the new year once they've managed to get their heads together as to what they're going to do and how they're going to do it. So, Isaac, what about you? You haven't had much say in this at this point around the head coach appointments.
Yeah, I don't know. I think the two flag head coaches keeping their job is 100% the right thing to begin with. I know the flag podcast will talk about that, but the work that they've done, especially going into Olympics where flag's there, you need that consistency and that continuity. Yeah. And I think keeping them to the work that they've done is 100%.
And they're performing, aren't they? Yeah,
100%. Yeah. And I think that Jason stepping away, in a way, is the right thing. It sounds really weird saying it because he's one of the best coaches in the UK, but it is the right thing. So then he can look at the program as a whole rather than I think it's hard as a coach, as a head coach, when you've also got to be the person who organises stuff and to overlook everything when you're so invested on one thing, if that makes sense. Like, you can't he'll be cutting himself too thin focusing on everything. Mm-hmm. Whereas now he can look at it as an umbrella and do you know what I mean? He's on top of that and he can see everything that's going on. And, I believe that the coaches will always be able to go to him for advice and mentorship, and he's one of the best because he gives that, and he gives sound advice all the time. Even when I was talking to him when I went to the Nottingham Green and I was talking about coaching, even there, like little stuff that he picks up on, little stuff he gives you is always really valuable. But no, definitely, I think that it's going to be interesting to see how different these new teams are. I think when we look back at the women's game, I can't remember Germany they were playing. Mm-hmm.
Finland last.
Yeah. I remember us all saying in private chats and stuff that it was stale. It was, we're going to do one thing, and that's it. Whereas now I feel like with the new appointment, I think it gives them a bit of freedom to do what they want. Do you know what I mean? It gives them a bit of freedom to show what they're about and what they can do. Whereas before it was like, we know the run game's going to work, so we're just going to keep doing it no matter what, where it wasn't working. And that was kind of the issue, and the performance wasn't there.
Yeah, 100%. It needed to shake up, didn't it? They were going backwards from European, I'm going to get this wrong, gold medalists, I'm sure, or was it silver? But
the bronze,
was it world silver or something? They were high performing. Certainly when I was in and around the program, knew a number of our coaches at Merseyside Nighthawks that who played and were in and around there. They were performing at a very high level, weren't they? And they have slipped. So maybe that this was the time to do it. I do notice how there isn't a women's development. That's obviously something that will need to be considered in years gone by, won't it? Because it's a men's development. But it'll be interesting to see.
The only thing I could say to that is look at we're going to get onto this in a bit, but the tiers of the men's game. Do you know what I mean? And yes, there is a lot of now young women coming into the game and wanting to play, but there's nowhere near the amount of clubs that there are in men's, if that makes sense. And there's not enough the amount of men. It'd be interesting to see how many members there are in women's football compared to men's football, and you know what I mean, and that sort of stuff. But definitely, like, I can understand why there isn't one. And I think it's more of this is a development, but also performance. I could see that kind of happening. Whereas they'll have that in the squad, and the coaches will know who it is, but they'll take it as one squad rather than two. You know, I mean, rather than, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to when we get Kiwi back to get her input on this. Might be able to do some retrospective sort of thoughts on this. But you know, Laura has got a tough task ahead. She's got a big task ahead as well, and she's got to be ready quickly because what's that? Germany in May, and then a potential medal game in August. That's a baptism of fire, isn't it? So she definitely does need to take Christmas to get stock and get ready, and then get the trials open for the new year, don't they? So looking forward to catching up with her, definitely, and with Kev as well, and see where, and maybe we'll have some more announcements on that going forward, that we can bring you up to date on. You mentioned it. Shall we touch upon it? Because I know we've been wanting to talk about this, but let's go in chronological for now and finish on. We'll talk about this and then finish on the most latest update. So, got to be careful here, because it is officially still media embargoed, but it has been obviously reported and been discussed at length across the community, and we'd be wrong not to talk about it. But there has been reports that obviously potentially Division 2 of adult contact will be scrapped going into the next season, in the 2026 season. I must stress this is not official. I must stress that this is not, definitely happening. This more than likely happened on a engagement call with head coaches and club officials, which I've been on many on both sides of the fence. And what was potentially presented was Prem and Division 1 only in adult contact. Stuart, you've got your opinions on this, I know, and I know Isaac has as well. So I kind of want to tee up Stuart and let Isaac take stock of this, because if it does happen, it obviously is a massive shake-up. And I can think of positives and negatives. Maybe not positives is the right word, but I can see both sides of the fence. What were your initial thoughts to this?
Yeah, you mentioned maybe not positives. I think there's one or two. I think for me, it's just another big change that is happening to contact football. And it's like season after season after season of big changes. The positive for me is, if this is true and it does happen, I think it's going to have to be ran with for a number of years to see the benefits, because it might be that teams that are coming up from Div 2 sort of aren't sure about it, don't agree with it, and their players either take real big stock of it and say, okay, let's look to improve my club, make my club better, and you find that they settle into Division 1 and it helps grow the bottom of the sport, or those clubs go the other direction and go, well, actually, I want to be part of the club that's across the border that's slightly better, and it weans out those clubs or gets rid of the clubs that are from Division 2 that have kind of doled down there a little bit, that are almost like your performance clubs, let's call them that.
Participation,
not performance, participation teams, and it makes the other teams better as a result, and we end up with Division 1 as a whole that's more competitive. So that's potentially the positive side of it from me, and where the thought process of those that are deciding this have gone down that line. But yeah, I'm going to hold off until this is official and we see where this kind of settles down. And then I think I'm going to make a bit more of an educated response to it. But apprehension, I think, is my main response to these reports that we've seen come out.
Yeah, I don't want to sit on the fence here, because it's something that I've thought about in in greater detail. I was one of those people deciding what the tiers should look like, 1 year. So I've done it all before, and I didn't make the decision, but I certainly came up with an idea. And when I think you guys held me back from putting in what the tiers would look like at the end of last year. Do you remember? I was thinking, we could do this sort of predictive sort of check. And when you go through it, when you start coming up with 4-team Division 2 divisions that are going to hopefully play 8 games, that will be three games against one side, and it's actually the same division that you saw last year, and that I just think that that's not appetizing to somebody who's going to pay to play the sport, is it? And so when I saw that happening, my initial thought was, why didn't you just get rid of tier 2? Now that is a complete almost like a reactionary opinion. It's no thought gone into it. It's just, that doesn't look right. Why don't we just fix it by getting rid of it? But obviously there's huge implications to getting rid of Division 2. And Isaac, no one knows Division 2 better than you, considering that you've played in it for a number of years now.
Yeah.
And so, I know you've got strong opinions on this. So what are BAFA missing by getting rid of Division 2? Should it happen?
I think you're missing the foundations of British American football, in my opinion. A lot of people who are older, you look at people who are 30 plus, when they're new into the sport, they've watched it on TV, they want to give it a go as a new sport, they go to a Div 2 team. You don't often see it where they go straight to a Prem or straight to a Division 1 team. They go to a local side, like your Darlingtons, your Doncasters, even like Cornwall, for example. You know what I mean? These teams who are in Div 2, who are just there, not for fun, they want to compete, but it's also just a laugh for your mates. And playing for the Wakefield Raiders, as I still do, I see that still. It is just time with some mates that you're on a football field and that's it, and it's fun. And you're going to have a pint with a team afterwards who you've just beaten or who've just lost to. You're going to have that time with them because you love the sport. And I think what's happened with this is it's been calculated in how it's been done. It's been happening over the last couple of years. I think we spoke about it last year when they took away the playoff structure of Div 2, where you're not going to get a North champion or a South champion. And you know what I mean? It wasn't going to be that anymore. But slowly but surely, I think that BAFA have been trying to move away from Div 2 as an idea. And I think that's really wrong. I think that we saw it in COVID times where it was based upon where teams are. And the divisions are much like this, what have been suggested and what have been, I guess, leaked. The divisions are the same, are pretty much the same anyways. You're going to be playing them sides that, you're going to do. You look at the Yorkshire Rams, for example, against most of that division they were in during COVID. It was 40-point plus wins they were getting every single week.
Look, do you remember Chester versus, I think it was Lee?
Yeah.
Where it was like 125-0 or something like that,
And we're going to see that.
Chester were at the top.
And we're going to see that again next year. And that isn't fair. That isn't competitive. And I know there's the argument of Div 1 teams might play weak. They won't play weakened teams. There's less playoff spots to get up to the next division. They're not going to play a weakened side against a side from Div 2 because they need that win, because they might not get a win against the side that's also already in Div 1. They're going to need that.
Not when your tiebreaker is points conceded.
100, exactly. Exactly. I think it threatens the player retention. Now, as a player, if I don't know if I'm going to play this year, and one of them is the financial factor of it. I'm paying the most amount of money I ever have done to play in British American football, and I'm going to play against lads who should have gone up to the Prem last year in a team, and they didn't because they underestimated people. And if you know what I mean, and there's one team in particular, I won't name names, but do you know what I mean? There's one team who should have gone up into the Prem who haven't because they thought they were better than everybody else, and they'll come with that same ego and that same thing when they're playing against Div 2 teams. Not to name names, but you look at a team like Doncaster, for example. The Doncaster Mustangs didn't win a game all season last year. They played, I think they played in every game, bar one. Yeah,
in Div 2, yeah.
Exactly, in Div 2. Then I'm going to have to go up against the Yorkshire side that I think they only lost to the Scunthorpe Alphas and Merseyside Nighthawks, who are now in the Prem.
Yeah, potentially.
Potentially. They should be on merit. They should be on merit. You know what I mean? But again, like, when I talk about the foundations of the sport, you look at a team like the East Kent Mavericks, who 2 seasons ago were in Div 2, and I think their running back at the time was the Great Britain running back. Without the East Kent Mavericks, he wouldn't have got into that sport, and I wouldn't have played for Great Britain, and now I think he's gone to the ELF. Do you know what I mean? And he's a great export that we've been able to produce because of Div 2. You look at the Scunthorpe Alphas, who've gone Div 2, Div 1, Div 1 for another season, and now potentially in the Prem. I think that as a whole, it seems as if what's happened is they've gone, right, we don't want Div 2 anymore. Let's just get rid of it. And eventually we'll get rid of them teams who are Div 2 and have that, that Div 2 mindset. It's not a mindset, it's just people who love the sport. You look at, like, if you go to like America, for example, or even you look at BUCS, you look at a team like Leeds, for example, or you look at a team like YSJ, who are losing most weeks, yet they're still enjoying the sport and they're still loving the sport and the coaches are loving it. And that's it. It's not about being the most competitive team in the world. It's about being just growing the sport in whatever way you can. And I think that this merger damages that in a way that can't be described, because I don't want to go and play against the Yorkshire Rams side that I know my team, before I even walk out onto the field, are going to lose against. You look at you look at what they've got compared to us. They've got, I'll say, so if you compare the Yorkshire Rams and the Wakefield Raiders, or you can even throw the Doncaster Mustangs into this. Leeds have got 2 universities feeding them in Beckett and Griffins, yet not having the best seasons, but still players with 11v11 experience, and experience at a high level. Wakefield Raiders, we don't have a university anywhere near us. The catchment area is so small. It's just, yeah. And then you look at, I know this is alleged and we're going into stuff that's been leaked and it shouldn't have gone out and it's all embargoed and stuff like that, but you look at that North and that Scottish division, and that alone, in my opinion, is ridiculous. I understand that the Scottish teams are the Scottish teams and they can't always play each other and it damages them in a way, but asking a team like Darlington and Gateshead, who are very much a Div 2 team, to go and play Aberdeen away, that's 600 miles plus.
Yeah, and certainly, and I mean, we talk about this with the HNC guys who are obviously all based up in Aberdeen and stuff, and they hear about London sides complaining about going to Edinburgh to play the finals, and the Aberdeen guys will still say, "Well, you still haven't travelled as far as us." Because the Aberdeen to Edinburgh is even further, and so it's a huge journey for anyone.
You look at new sides coming into it, Rosendale, who, they played their associate games last year, and that was really well won by Baffa. I actually praise Baffa for what they did with that, because putting them in that Scottish division and giving them that game experience, and basically
alongside Aberdeen, yeah,
you know what I mean, exactly, and helping them, but then going into a division where they've got Chester potentially, the likes of Chester. I can't remember who else was in there, but they've got some really good teams like in there. They're not going to grow from that. Do you know what I mean? They might pick up a couple of wins against Div 2 teams, like they would do if they was in Div 2, and that's it.
I think what you're rightly saying, and I think what this is struggling with, and it's the struggle that Baffa have had for many years. The competition managers will have this struggle no matter what. It's performance versus participation, isn't it? Because I don't think you can have both.
No,
I don't think you can have both without a separation. If you think about soccer or football, sorry for anybody in England who tells me off for saying soccer, but we call it football. You've got the EFL and you've got the non-league, and I think we talked about this offline, haven't we? Where the non-league might be semi-pro, but it's a participation side of it, whereas you've got obviously the EFL where you've got the performance side. And is there a way in which we can get to that where we don't always hang our banner on performance and there is a participation angle to this? Because you need participants to be able to sustain a sport. That's the issue.
Yeah, there is, and I think I brought this. I think I haven't said it on a podcast, or I've said it in private chat, and I've definitely said it in our Raiders group chat. But why not just make it a massive Div 1 North and a Div 2 South? Just have it like that. And it's participation. You play each team once or however many times, and it's if we get refs, we get refs, but if not, we ref it ourselves as Div 1 coaches or even of level 1 coaches, and we do it like that, like we have to do for most Div 2 games anyways. Make it about that. Make it that participation of, if teams want to go up to Div 1, give them that opportunity. Say, you know what, like let's say Humber, for example, who went undefeated in the Div 2 North or East. Go, well done, guys. You've been undefeated. Would you like to come to Div 1? And if other teams don't want to, right, we'll make one big one. You play one game against each other. You get 7, 8 games, maybe 9 games. Everyone gets more football. You pay the same amount of money for, competitive, better, fun football. It seems as if people are playing for a product, and they're not going to get any enjoyment out of it. Because I think that's why, especially when, you get to in your 30s or even late 20s, you want to play sport for fun. You want it as a break from life.
Stay active. Yeah,
it's that of you say you're in the office Monday to Friday. You want a break from life. I'm going to go on the field on a Sunday. I'm going to hit someone. Do you know what I mean? It's that in it. It's.
I get you, and I mean, I think that's the cocktail and the equation that a competition manager or BAFA have to try and deal with, isn't it? Because we've heard about travel, we've heard about participation, we've heard about performance, we've heard about shrink to grow, get smaller before you get bigger, and all this sort of stuff. And I think that is the challenge, and that's the struggle that anybody's going to have. And I get all your points.
I think there is so much more context behind this. I'd have loved to have been a fly on the wall if the meeting has happened or what. I don't know how this has been disseminated to the people that have, know about it. But I still think there's loads more context. We're talking about like 600-mile round trips. Who's going to face off who, weaker teams, stronger teams. I think there's so much more context and thought behind this than we even know about. So although we're talking about it today, I can't wait to read the official press release that comes out that says this is why, this is what, this is how, and this is when, to find out,
we need that, don't we?
Yeah, to find out, okay, this is what my thought processes are. This is how we're going to support these teams that we're talking about in terms of Isaac noticing Doncaster, Wakefield, Lee, Cornwall. This is how we're going to support those teams. It might be in the format of a travel subsidy. You don't know. Like if you're traveling over 400 miles, heck, we're going to pay for that because you're an ex-D2 team that we understand can't do it. So I just think there's so much more to this that has already come out that shouldn't have come out that is going to be discussed. So yeah, for me, I need to see more context behind it.
And the likes of Isaac is going to be wound up by this because it has been leaked in that manner, right? And that's a difficult one here, isn't it?
And I think that's it. I think a lot of clubs have been told that this is confidential. We can't lose that. Nothing can come out about this. But yeah, it has. And one thing I'm going to say before you start, but I think the reason why this has happened, and I think we're never gonna know the full reason why, unless someone from BAFA comes and speaks, comes on the podcast and talks to us, which I'm sure that we'd all enjoy.
Got a platform to do it.
Yeah. Exactly. And I think the entire Britball community would love to hear from them. But I feel it's like you look at the ELF coming in, and you look at they've changed the name again, but it was the Alliance.
Yeah, whatever it's going to be called.
4 times.
Yeah.
They've come in and said, look, we're going to have one London team. I'm going to have another team in the UK somewhere. You look at Bristol, who've now got investment, which is great for them, and they're looking at Europe as a potential. There's always been the thing of Manchester potentially going to Europe and playing there. I think that BAFA have noticed that they might lose teams in the next 2 years, so they have to up the competition, but they're not going to up the competition by destroying one. If that makes them teams are still there, no matter what. And I think that
every sports strategy comes with a pyramid,
100%.
Doesn't it? And at the moment, what we're being told that in 2027, the tip of that pyramid is going to be somewhere down in Leighton Orient's ground, right? Yeah. So obviously we've got NFL and college. Sorry, I'm talking about British American football. That tip is going to be whatever London team, and part of that has got to be grassroots participation so we can find that. And we've got seen GB stuff. We've seen, but the domestic competition has to rest at some point in it. And if you don't mind, if we can, if I can wrap up this sort of conversation, which we'll be able to talk about in a much more detail when we know it's official and we've got more detail. And I'm sure I'll let you loose on that as well, Isaac, when it comes through. But I am looking forward to the year that we don't do anything with the domestic league and we leave it alone.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that year that it looks the same. as the year before, because trying to tell the story and trying to tell and keep up with it is difficult as a team trying to keep everybody informed. We can't predict it, and that's why you guys at the end of the year tell me, no, don't try and predict next year because it's going to be wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
And my God, it would have been wrong, wouldn't it? But
Mm.
I've got to finish off by saying, we've got to be mindful that these are guys who aren't full-time employed to do this. Some are paid, so I can't say all volunteers, but there are volunteers involved as well who have got the most almighty piece of rubbish to deal with when it comes to all the different things that they have to consider when it comes to forming a competition. So my heart goes out to anybody who has that, as a task to do, because I've tried to do it myself and it isn't easy.
And it's going to be even more difficult now it's come out before it should have done.
Yeah, I agree. Right,
Yeah.
let's end on something positive because we are now running really, really long. But maybe Stuart, when it comes to the podcast, you can snip this off. But
Maybe
something really, really positive because I couldn't believe what I was reading when we got the press release. We were obviously told to. We were given heads up by BAFA. Thank you very much to BAFA for giving us a heads up, and presumably it went out to different media team because it was an official press release that was going to be released on the 16th, which was yesterday. And BAFA have partnered with the Union Jack Classic. So if those of you who don't know the Union Jack Classic, you just need to go to our website to read my amazing article. I'll tell you all about it. But for those who are listening and watching, the Union Jack Classic will be the very first college football game played in Wembley Stadium. By the Arizona State Sun Devils and the Kansas Jayhawks, which is a Big 12 conference game, which is just awesome, isn't it? It is actually the second college football game that has happened in the UK. The last time being, anybody? Did either of you read my article?
Does last year count?
You did put it in the article.
Does last year count?
In England, sorry, not in the because Ireland is not the UK. I hate to tell you, Isaac, but
I'm gonna guess there was one at Murrayfield in Scotland at some point.
Well,
No.
According to my research, it was in Crystal Palace in 1988, and it was Richmond versus Boston College, presumably when Boston College was in the Ivy League and stuff like that. But
Greyhounds. Sorry, Ted Lasso reference there. Sorry.
Don't know what you're on about. I haven't seen it. Sorry.
No.
But no, 1988 was the last time we had a college football game in England, apparently, according to my research. I am not calling that as fact. But nonetheless, I think that's very interesting. And then to the point about divisions and the competition manager, as part of this partnership, they get naming rights effectively, is what as I read it as. So the national leagues will be the national competitions title partner will be the Union Jack Classic. So we will now be talking about the Union Jack Classic Women's Flag Football League and the Union Jack Classic Adult Contact League and so on, which is
Union Jack Classic's M1.
Yeah, M1. Imagine. Yeah, absolutely. M25.
Catchy, right?
Yeah, exactly. But no, I think am I missing something? Is this not amazing?
No, it's incredible.
Yeah,
isn't it?
I think you saw it in Ireland last. I think they've had 2 games in Ireland now, if I remember rightly.
Yes. No, more than that. Way more than that, actually.
Well,
I think
in recent memory, anyways, the Islanders Classic, it's huge. It builds the appetite, doesn't it? It makes people turn on the TV and want to watch American football in Great Britain, and then it just goes outwards. And I think it's always good when BAFA are promoting this,
and the other way. And
pardon?
when the event promotes, when the event promotes BAFA as well.
Exactly, because if someone turns on the TV and all of a sudden they see a BAFA logo and like, oh, what's that? And then they Google it, they find the local team and they start playing. Even kids, it's how I got into it, and I think it's how many people got into it. You turn the TV on one day, what's this game with people running around with helmets and pads on? I want to go play it. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of storyline we see in most clubs up and down the country, and I think that having BAFA at the forefront of this is going to promote them. And this game doesn't need promoting. But, the British American football game does, if that makes sense. I think that this game promotes itself. And, hopefully we can be in the press box.
Hats off to Chad and his team, right, Stuart? Isn't this just what one thing that you were expecting from the new CEO?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that for the last 5 or 6 years, people have gone, why are we not pumping money into this? Why are we not getting money into the sport? Why is this not happening? Oh, the good old days of the Budweiser League, the Coca-Cola League. Well, now we have,
The start.
2026, the start of something that could potentially grow. We've just gone on a bit of a rant about how we're sort of shrinking to grow. Well, this is a really good start, really good foundation. It remains to be seen what happens with it and how it affects the sport. But to have a naming title company, I think they are, if they're getting 90,000 bums on seats in Wembley, if 10% of those people are then interested in British American football at whatever level, playing, coaching, refereeing, team admin, sorry, Aaron, I know you hate that term, then, fantastic, brilliant. Let's do it. Let's get involved. Let's get behind it. Let's support it. Let's celebrate it. Shout it from the rooftops.
Well, these are the guys who are involved in the NFL International. So the guys who are running the Union Jack Classic are the same guys who ran and got the NFL London up and running. I believe, I think I read somewhere that one of the guys was actually involved in the 88 and 89 stuff, the Budweiser and the Coca-Cola stuff. And so, the hope is that this, presumably it comes with investment. It doesn't state in the statement that it comes with investment, but you would presume so. But if it does, or even if it brings eyes to the sport, there can only be positives coming from this, we hope.
Yeah, exactly. If there's eyes on it, the investment will come eventually. It just needs time. Really.
Yeah. 100%. And maybe that's what the competition managers will be asking for as well, as a bit of time, and as they work through their strategy, who knows. But hey, we have gone very long. We still have some people listening and watching, but it's tailing off as we have got on to bring you up to date with some contact news as well. It's been great to chat. Been great to catch up. We'll need to figure out how we're going to get to these news points quicker than we normally do. We'll figure that out. That's not the listeners or the viewers' issue. We'll get to that. We will not be back next week because it'll be Christmas Eve. We are going to take a couple of weeks break over Christmas, and we'll be back before BUCS kicks off, because we'll do something similar to this. We'll catch up with some of the news as well. I'm sure we'll get alignments dropping during that time. We might even get fixtures by then. Who knows? For adult contacts, summer stuff. And we'll look forward to bringing it to you. But for those who have joined us, thank you. The IG chat's been great. Listening to some of the comments, we've had some comments on Facebook as well, and I've taken that as a note to talk about next time as well. Thank you, James, for your comment there. We'll pick that up for sure. Merry Christmas, everybody. Hope you have a lovely time, and check in on people and make sure that they're not lonely during the Christmas holidays as well. But hope you all have a lovely Christmas break, lovely holidays, Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year and Merry Christmas to Stuart and Isaac as always. Thank you very much for joining me again, and we will be back in a couple of weeks to kick off the new year with another podcast. Thank you for those who have joined us, watching and listening. We will catch you again in the new year. Take care.